So I wanted to film this week's maintenance session on this client with two really cool tanks. I just wanted these tanks are really good at showing kind of a day-to-day of my life, and then also not only that, just show you guys some really cool setups and show you how I kind of do them on a weekly basis. Of course, depending on how the tank is or how it's doing, things change, but I'll kind of go through what a normal week looks like on two really nice setups. Now that you see the 120p here with the ADA, full ADA, and then we also have downstairs, and the same client has the full ADA 180p. So two really cool tanks. Typically most people don't have the pair in one household, so this is just a really cool client and a house that's really cool to showcase for this case today. I'd like to keep showing maintenance sessions on different styles of tanks and kind of showing equipment. I know everybody loves that and seeing how they're set up, so I'll continue to do that for sure. But I think for kind of doing this first time video, I think this household and these two tanks are a perfect example and kind of one of the more cooler ones to showcase. So that's what we're gonna do today. So like I said, this is the 120p. If you follow my social medias, you're gonna know both tanks that I'm talking about here today. But this video just kind of go more in depth of how I kind of do it, and then kind of showcase some of the more equipment in more detail as well. And of course, if you guys have questions on any of it, just let me know in comments or social media, like always. I'm sure there's gonna be a few things I missed, but for the most part, these setups, that's what's really cool about these setups, are they're fairly simple for the most part. So that's what's really cool. So this setup with this Igumi, it's been kind of a up and down process. So right now you can kind of see there's a little bit of hair algae growing on this one. We just did a major trim a couple weeks ago, so that kind of flared up the algae just a little bit. And so we're kind of just letting it kind of establish in, and then I'm gonna probably have to weekly, if not every 2 weeks, kind of really make sure it's trimmed really low. Because obviously, as we know with the Igumis, when you let them go, they get really thick, and that carpet underneath is gonna eventually, kind of start dying out if it gets too thick and it's not getting enough light. So that's what makes the Igumis a little more tougher, and especially for a client, even harder, because it's not, my own setup to where I can almost work on it daily if I need to. Some of these clients where I'm only here, pretty much as often as weekly, and then most people are every 2 weeks. But on a setup like this is definitely a weekly maintenance tank for sure. So what I'll end up doing is usually go around and clean all the glass panels. There's a couple different products that I'll use. I have some couple hand razors, like the Scape and ADA one that I like to use. And then I also use the Scape duo pads. Those are really nice for just hand cleaning, and honestly a lot of times that's the end of what I do most of the work with is a duo pad. But then for a lot of these bigger tanks, really all these tanks, I'm going with a magnet. I use the Toonsy ones right here, so I just keep them in between a rag here, so the magnets are pretty strong with these Toonsies. So if you're looking for a really good magnet, a little more pricier, but Toonsies are really awesome, and they can do some really thick glass. So you can put razors on both ends or just one, and I just have the one, and I just keep replacements when needed. But I can do a lot of takes before ever replacing these blades, so it's pretty nice. So I'll go through and sweep the glass panels, same with the downstairs tank and really any tank, and then I'll pretty much start doing a water change from there. The only thing that would be different is if I'm trimming a tank, I may bring the water level down just a little bit if I need to, just so there's no splashing, and then I'll go through and trim the whole tank like this, which I'll do a video eventually when I trim this again pretty big time. But this one's quite the process to trim. So I can do these pretty quickly now, especially with some good tools. Obviously my whole tool arrangement is ADA, so those really make a big difference, and not only the cut quality, but then also the time it takes. You can really, without your hands cramping up too bad, ADAs are pretty smooth. So if you have some cheaper tools, which works just fine too, of course, but that's kind of the biggest difference I've noticed is with ADA tools, a lot more smoother, a lot more less hand cramps. So some really nice stuff, and of course the different shapes and variations also help get around nooks and crannies too. And some of these tanks have a lot going on for them. So like this tank today, I'll probably take my actual wire brush and kind of scrub the rock work. Now at the end of the day, we're not trying to like pristine clean any rocks at all, because it's just unnatural looking. But especially with some hair grass, we have a big cleaner crew in here, but it does need a little bit of help. So usually we'll go through and just hand scrub these rocks, and then once we do the water change, hopefully it kind of starts going back to normal, which it's been big time, but I haven't really scrubbed the rocks since I did the trim. So hopefully after today, scrub the rocks and change some water out, it'll kind of go through a little bit of reset quite a bit. But with the carpet still kind of establishing back in after the huge trim, it's going to be like that naturally. Like I said, Igumis don't really have the plant load that a normal plant tank would have. So when you have a bunch of stems and all that, and they're constantly growing, uptaking phosphates and nitrates, stuff like that, like it makes it a lot easier. And trimming just no big deal. It just reestablishes way quicker. And the carpets will too, but especially after a big trim, like I said, it can be kind of, it needs to really recover for a second. So, but this tank, I can kind of flip around and show you guys the equipment real quick. So we got here. So the main stone, before I talk about even equipment, the Scape wise, this is all Frodo stone. So I'll generally use Frodo for a lot of tanks. Of course, unless, somebody doesn't end up wanting to spin on Frodo. Of course, Frodo can get very expensive very fast. It's very dense, very heavy. And per pound, it's a lot, like $10 per pound. So it's not a cheap stone by any means, but obviously the people that know Frodo know it's the most detailed stone out of anything. So it's real easy to get some really cool pieces and make a tank look really nice and natural with them. So just a lot of cool cuts and lines through Frodo, so it just makes it kind of like this stone right here, just a really cool look. So, and with Frodo being a lot of flat pieces, it was kind of tough making a Ugumi out of it, but the client loves Frodo, the 180p downstairs loves Frodo, so luckily we were able to kind of create some, so also when you get down below, it's, makes a little more sense. And of course we have the crypts that are going off the edge, kind of following the rock work, so that's kind of a nice touch. We got a lot of the S-rep-ins around the corner. But yeah, as you see, so just some of the patchiness, so a lot of it's coming back now, but it's just going to take a few weeks to really get that carpet looking good again and growing pretty steady. So, but no big deal, it looks pretty good though. And then light-wise, we have a Twin Star, whatever the newest one out, except this is not the Bluetooth one, so it's the previous model. I think this is version 4. It's the Series S, so obviously at Series S we'll need the brightest model for this tank, it being the Ugumi. We kind of want as much light as we can on the carpet here. And then same deal, this is a full ADA setup at the end of the day except for the light. So we do have the ADA Superjet 1200 on here. Obviously great filters, been running this tank even before this was a plant tank. So this thing's been through it, but yeah, I've been running great. And then the CO2 reactor is actually from Green. So the CO2 setup in general, which is pretty much the only CO2 setup I'll use, is Greenleaf Aquariums. So we have a 10-pound setup right there with the GLA regulator, and then the GLA reactor, which isn't stainless anymore. I think their new ones are see-through, which is kind of sad. But hopefully maybe they'll do some new stainless ones. I don't know, but it does look really nice against the Superjet, so it just matches. So which is why I say that. So. But then what's nice too is the heaters also are connected through the GLA, so kind of hides the heaters, which is obviously I love that. So the line goes into the CO2 reactor, obviously the CO2 line goes into the reactor, and then it all gets pushed back up into the lily pipes and back into the tank. So yeah, it works out really nice. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The filter wise, obviously we just have all the ADA biomedia, and then we have it topped off with filter floss and Purigen on top of that. So pretty much the same on literally every tank I'll ever do. Unless there's obviously other problems, or if it's a saltwater tank, we may put other supplements in there for phosphates and all that. So, but for plant tanks, freshwater tanks, biological, filter floss / filter socks, and the only other media we ever use is Purigen. So, or maybe we'll substitute for Chemi Clean sometimes, but Purigen is our number one. So yeah, so pretty simple setup. But yeah, obviously I'm going to be doing the maintenance here today, so hopefully look a lot better at a later point. But it doesn't look too bad today, just a little bit of green spot on the glass. So I just scrub down and scrub the rocks and give a good 50% water change, and we'll be good. So yeah, that's how much I've been doing recently on this, and that's pretty much what I'll always do on a lot of these tanks, is 50% on plant tanks. And then I'll remineralize with salty shrimp, which is in my bag here. So the salty shrimp, GHKH, that's what I'll use for every freshwater tank for remineralizing, unless it's like a weird like cichlid tank where we need a lot of salts and harder water, but if that's the case, we just use tap water, to be honest. The tap water here, it's hard enough, so no need to buy products and remineralize it, which again, using RO and still remineralizing is a lot better, so it just depends on the setup really. So but for the most part, if it's a freshwater tank, RO mineralized with this GHKH. If it's like a shrimp only tank with Caradinas or something, we may just do GH only and do no KH so the pH is as low as possible. But other than that, this literally gets used on every single tank that's freshwater. So I buy the big ones, the 750s. So a little more pricier, but obviously I'm using a lot of tanks with this, so this doesn't last very long. But I need that much at a time, so just carry the big bottle with me at all points. But yeah, so I'll go downstairs and show you guys kind of the equipment. So coming down these stairs where the Yukimi was right there, then we get down here to our 180p. So obviously this is the kind of the showcase tank. Obviously both of them really in anybody's minds are probably both fantastic, but definitely the 180 is definitely a showstopper, so can't really beat it. But got it down here, and then this room back here is actually the fish room, so this is where all the equipment is and how we do our water changes. So before we talk about the big boy, we can show you guys how this room works. So this little back room, so also got utility sink, and then our RO system, which is bulk reef supply. Pretty much I'll always use the 6 stage. I may put a 7 stage depending on somebody's water, but it doesn't really get bad at all anywhere here and where I'm at. So 6 stage is plenty. It just gives a backup a resin, so if one gets depleted, it's we can catch it in time before we have to change the whole thing again. So we got that. The power strip is usually mounted up. We have to get a new one. I used the clients that they already had, and then we did an adhesive that obviously a little too heavy for adhesive, so we'll have to get a new power strip that actually can screw onto this board here. But the 180p, these are all the ADA bricks for the solar RGB, so obviously the people that have that will recognize those pretty quick. But those all nicely mounted up, and the wire goes up in the ceiling, and that's where those solar RGBs drop down, which is pretty nice. Makes everything super slick instead of just running wire to straight to the ground. So makes everything look really professional. And then same with the RO system, we have some 3D printed mounts that we use for the RO line to kind of go straight down with it, so it looks a little bit neater. And then we have our 2 brutes here, so one for each tank. So the 180p gets this one, and the 120p upstairs gets this one. They're just both at this point they're actually probably about the same temperature, but we just keep the water separate again, just to not cross contaminate anything at any point. So we got the room, so might as well separate them. So and then we have a refiller. So this is how we refill the upstairs tank. The downstairs I don't really need to because it's such a close distance that I just use another pump and hose. But for upstairs, we use this one that comes out, and then this goes into this. There's already a pump down in here, and this will pump all the way upstairs and refill that 120p pretty easily. So that's kind of nice there. And then here, this is where I have another pump. So I have a pump in here with the hose, and then we have it wrapped up with a ball valve on there. So this one I'm actually able to reverse siphon, so I'm able to put this whole thing in the sink, and then I'm able to put this end, basically drag this whole hose upstairs, and then I can just suck on the end of this one, and literally it'll gravity feed all the way downstairs to drain the water, and it drains very, very quickly. So it kind of works out nice. Don't have to do anything. Don't have to run water outside or run buckets. So it just comes, the 120p just drains right into the sink all the way downstairs. So works out there. And then, like I said, then we refill it with this right here upstairs. And then the downstairs tank, I pretty much use this pump for draining and filling. So just use it for a little two-way. And then the client here has a few other tanks that they're going to be playing with. This is kind of like their own personal that they're just going to experiment with, breeding some certain stuff. So some really cool little extra setups there. But yeah, I can show you guys the 180p real quick, and then I'll probably get you guys some time-lapse cleanings, of course. So yeah, if you haven't seen this 180p before, pretty much kind of it's definitely nature style, but I would say jungle too, because there's no stems in here. The very first time we've had this tank set up, it was actually in another house, and then this is a brand new house, so we had to tear this apart and bring it here and rescape it and all that. Which the scape's pretty much the same. It's altered just a little bit for stuff that we wanted to change, but plant choice wise, slightly tweaked, mainly just the background. The whole background is basically just all crypts, which is really nice because less trimming, of course. The stems look really good, but after it still took a while. Like after like 2 years, even like constantly trimming it, sometimes the underneath would get so shadowed and start dying out, and so it basically caused us to replant it, which is again totally normal. But for this tank, we kind of wanted to try something different and do like a really crypt heavy tank, like something that just kind of stays in put, and we just have to thin it out every once in a while. So, which I think was definitely, a really nice choice. I think the crypts look really, really cool. We have like 5 or 6 different, crypts back here. So the tiger red is the most noticeable, and then we have some green crypts, and we just have some all kinds of other stuff that's just coming all around and mixing in. So just a bunch of different crypt varieties that makes it look really cool. But we thinned them all out last week, so this whole like top of the tank was just covered. But we thinned it all out, and now it's like more open. The tank looks a lot brighter, so it's not like a big shadow, because the tank was looking like kind of dark, which I just made a recent Instagram post of the crypt that was in here that we trimmed. That was literally the full length of this whole tank, so some pretty crazy growth that comes on here. But yeah, we're starting to kind of put more plants, kind of really trying to fill in the foreground here and kind of the mid-ground, because we have the back's doing really great, but we're kind of just trying to more establish. So we got a lot more S. repens kind of in patches here, growing in, and that was mainly because a lot of the soil is leaching too, which when we scaped this tank, we kind of patched it pretty well. But again, when you have loaches, corydoras, hill streams, shrimp in here, a mono shrimp, neocaridines, it's like almost impossible to sometimes keep soil off the sand, especially when you have a tank just escaped like this. But we've been able to keep it pretty good. Also, you can still see there's some leaching in the front here, but it's going a lot better than it was. So now that all these plants are going in, all those root structures kind of holding the soil back, it's getting harder for a lot of these fish to push the soil around, which is going to be a lot nicer, because hopefully we can kind of keep a cleaner sand bed, going forward. But yeah, when that's all sucked up, which you guys will probably see in this video, but just really brightens up the tank. And eventually, once that's done leaching, we'll kind of lay a whole new layer of La Plata, and hopefully it kind of can stay that way for future. But yeah, just kind of one of the things you kind of just have to change up and do differently. Sometimes scapes don't work out like you want them to, but just gotta improvise and make things that will work and do a lot better. But yeah, so like I said, crypts in here. All this wood in here is ghost wood. Love ghost wood. Doesn't really leach that much. It always comes in big chunky pieces, so it's pretty easy to find some massive pieces. This whole piece right here is one massive piece that V's out and comes in. Literally, I think like a 6-foot piece, so it's massive. Just sticks out of the tank quite a bit. And then same with these pieces, just big old 6-foot logs that just stick out of the tank. And then same deal, we got photostone all through the foreground. The photostone's really, really cool in this tank. Really big pieces. Like this piece right here in this corner is like a 3-foot piece that's like just in this corner. You could just see how tall it is. Like it's literally, say 24. So yeah, it's like probably a 9 or 10 inch tall rock that's in there. It's a big old flat piece, but it's just, oh my God, it's just chunky as can be, like 150 pounds just sitting in that corner. And then this big old flat piece too. Doesn't look like much, but that literally sits underneath that huge piece that I was talking about. Same deal, that's like a 100-pound piece of photo. And then we got a lot of just flat stones and for detail out in the front, and then obviously just some average, size stuff that for detail all around. And then out in the middle here, some people are going to wonder what this is out in the middle. This is all Monte Carlo growing epiphytically, so it gives that kind of vine effect sticking down. Client really liked that in another setup we did, so we did it in this tank when we rescaped it. Same with up there, we have some Monte Carlo kind of drooping down, so just kind of gives the tank a really cool look. Kind of a pain to maintain, but when done right, it really does give a really nice look, and it's really unique. You've probably seen that done in a lot of contest tanks as well. And then the plants are growing out. This is Pentophilia UK. Not sure if we're gonna keep it full time. It's kind of just growing out. It was in the last tank, but we also didn't like how much it grew. So I don't know if that's gonna stay there full time, but it's just in there and growing. So obviously it doesn't really hurt nothing other than just sucks up all the good stuff. So just kind of it's just another plant to kind of really take out a lot of stuff in this tank, especially with quite a bit of fish in here. But we're still doing water changes weekly, so it's not like it's a big deal. But yeah, the more growth we can kind of get and kind of sucking up everything in this tank, the more the plants, the better, because the crypts don't do as much as like the stems did, just because the stems grew so fast. But yeah, this is all philodendron. I forget what the actual name for it is, but this is the exact plant that's in Amano's home tank and a lot of other tanks at ADA. This one came straight from his home tank. I got a trimming off of it and then just been growing it out ever since, and now it's just like this big ball of just 4 feet long in every direction possible. I've trimmed it multiple times, so it's it's this big at my house. It's this big in other people's tanks, so it's just crazy what like literally 3 leaves turned into. So, but literally looks awesome. Like for this tank, it's just like the showstopper. It's just that huge plant that just sticks out and grows around the log. It's just really cool look. So really happy how that's kind of turned out. And then other plants, we got AR, Esrepens, we got Bucephalangia throughout all the kind of crooks and nannies as well. Got Cryptoparva that's kind of in the foreground too. That looks really nice. And then we have some Pink Panther that's kind of growing out in the middle that you can't really see. And then of course just a bunch of Nubius all in the rockwork. But again, we're gonna kind of keep tweaking this tank over time. We just kind of need the kinks to be worked out, and then we'll start doing a lot more stuff to this tank. But yeah, this tank's gonna be never ending. So do a lot of cool stuff over time with this tank. And then also we got the outlets over there, but then we do have a Neuro 5 from AI just for more flow in this tank. Obviously the fish love it, and then obviously just to keep detritus moved around. The super jet on this moves the tank just well, but it's a little more flow, doesn't hurt at all. So we were able, I was trying to keep it as clean as possible. Of course, that's why we kept like the tubes over there, so when you walked in, you didn't really see any of that. But even with the AI, usually it's even a little tighter than this, but let's see if we can readjust it here. There we go. So I kind of was able to put that wire into the hood, and you can see the wire just really neatly tight all the way down. Then also you just have the power cord there that you can't help. But yeah, I was able to kind of really clean that up. So that circulation pump really doesn't honestly affect anything visually wise. And then down to the equipment. So this is where this tank's kind of cool, because literally this is like the max you can do with an ADA tank these days. But you got ADA Superjet 2400. So obviously that master guy there, if you've never seen one of these before, it's literally the size of like a 5-gallon bucket. So it's massive filter. And then same setup that we have upstairs. We have a CO2 reactor. Same setup. We have some heaters in here. And then we actually have the new Chihiro's inline here too. That's app controlled, so I'm able to see the temperature on this, with this being in the basement. Sometimes wintertime it gets the temperature can kind of drop quite a bit, so this allows me to kind of keep an eye on it. And then same CO2 setup, 10-pounder with GLA reg, and then it all comes out to the massive lily pipes. The outlet's a 17 mil, and then the inlet is a 20 mil. So massive, especially that inlet, because that's the only ADA Superjet that use a 20 mil inlet, and it's quite massive. And it will break still. As thick as that one is, I have broken that one once already. So yeah, definitely still breakable, just like the rest of them. But yeah, just obviously just an amazing looking tank, and it's been really fun to maintain this one over the years. Even now, like rescaping it and kind of doing some new stuff with this tank has been really fun. But to talk about the fish choice here upstairs, I don't even know if I mentioned, but obviously pretty self-explanatory. Those are cardinals up there, but there is quite a bit of mix in here. So we have a big school of roseline barbs in here. We have a trio of massive gouramis, just some pearl gouramis, and then we have a school of Bosemani rainbows here. And then I forget the names on these. The client really loved them. A little bit rarer of a rainbow, but you can see it just have the orange tail on the end. But yeah, he wanted to throw those in the mix. He really loved them, so he ended up buying those and doing those in here as well. And yeah, it just looks super awesome. We also have some dwarf chain loaches, which really weren't supposed to be a permanent resident in here. They kind of just help with snail control when we did have it in here. Unfortunately, some of the epiphytics in here, like Anubias and stuff, brought pests from another company, unfortunately, even though after we dipped them as two. So for a little bit there, we actually had a kind of a snow problem. So we ended up doing some dwarf chain loaches. But they're still a really cool tank. I mean, really cool fish. They school around the tank and really active. So they're kind of just a fun one to have. And they obviously don't get massive whatsoever. So at least they're not, a big old loach that's going to get massive over time. So really fun to have. And then we do have, as you saw there, the Hillstream loaches. We do actually have babies in this tank, so you can see right there. They are breeding in this tank, which is obviously it's not surprising because how big this tank is, but usually a lot of things just don't naturally breed in a display like this, so it's kind of cool to see, out of all things, the Hillstreams actually laying eggs and actually them hatching with everything in here. I'm surprised nothing ate them, but pretty cool to see. And then we have some panda corridors, which you may see kind of in and out. And then a bunch of monos. I don't know if we really have nearite snails in here, which is probably a little bit of a problem. Not that we really need them, but I think we kind of have. We didn't really never put back nearites in this tank, so we may get a bunch of nearites back in here. Same with autosyncles too. We really don't have much autosyncles in here, but like I said, the tank doesn't really need it. But I do like to have that, kind of trying to keep up with the clean crew in here because it does make a difference on some of the stuff, especially some of the more delicate plants like the Bucephalangia, Nubias, just stuff that's slow, grows slower and just want to keep the algae kind of down if possible. And we got a Siamese, or this is actually a flying fox, but same stuff at the end of the day. And then I think that's literally it fish wise. I can't think we did have like we did have the huge school of rummy nose tetras in here. So people that remember this tank on social media, you guys will remember we had like probably 100 rummy nose in here at one point. But then yeah, the client wanted to change it up and do roseline sharks in here. So obviously really the roselines, I mean, most people don't have tanks big enough to really do big schools in them, so it's like this tank's kind of the opportunity to do that. And yeah, I think it's really cool. I think the roselines are kind of fitting in here, especially with this whole tank setup. This tank is just so cool to watch with the bigger fish, and we pretty much have it down to like only 9 roselines. So obviously we're kind of accounting for the size. We did have like 30, so but we're going to keep a small school, and then of course we're going to obviously factor in all the rainbow fish as well. So we're kind of just slowly taking stuff out as they get bigger too. But and then the mix with like the trio of like the Programis that are just massive and healthy. You just sit back in this basement and this thing's it's just flowing, which is what I think a lot of people miss with freshwater, and don't realize. It's like just the amount of just action you can see. Obviously saltwater, if you get a lot of fish going, but just the natural schooling that happens in freshwater, just because a lot of these fish are a lot smaller, and you can get true schooling action out of freshwater fish versus a true schooling saltwater fish is going to be something that gets 3 feet. So it's quite a big difference, and it's something you don't get in saltwater. So this is where I just think freshwater blows saltwater tanks out of the water. Is just these big schools of fish, and when you just sit back and have all these different varieties, and you have just fish at every little point of the tank, foreground, midground, up top. You got the gouramis that are always up top and back in the crypts. You got the roselines and rainbows running the middle. You got all the cories, loaches, hillstreams running the bottom. Same with like the models and stuff like that. So it's just action at every level of the tank. So it's just kind of a perfect little setup, and something that's I think everybody needs to see a tank like this at least once if you haven't, because it definitely changes your mind, especially with people that love corals and saltwater, which again everybody has their niche and stuff. But yeah, this is something that is hard to really explain to people until I see it. So it's been a really cool setup, and it's just ever changing and ever getting better. So but yeah, let's start doing water changes here and get them all cleaned up and show you guys kind of the aftermath. So I got the hose that I got laying up here. So as you can never the same hose with the ball valve, so I get it run up all the way to the top here, and literally I can just start a siphon, and this all just literally drains all the way downstairs into that room, into the utility sink. So literally I just started it and it's already down like 3 or 4 inches, so that's why it's a ball valve. I can kind of turn the ball valve and adjust the flow rate. So if I'm sitting there scrubbing stuff, it kind of gives me time to kind of scrub stuff and start siphoning out at the same time. So, but yeah, pretty useful little setup. Like I said, it gives me options to kind of clean the glass, and also I can kind of slowly start sucking stuff, or vice versa. If I'm trimming and I'm scrubbing stuff, I can kind of siphon at the same time as I'm scrubbing, so it works out pretty well. So we'll kind of turn down the ball valve here already, because I need siphoning out quite a bit. Oh, and then pretty self-explanatory, but this is the wire brush I was talking about. So literally just a welding brush, but it looks like a little toothbrush. These work good. I do have the 88 ones too, but they're a little more fragile, and I'll use those in really delicate jobs because they're so small. But for like some big rocks where I'm just really going at it, I'll just use like one of these welding ones. Works just fine for this scenario, so just go through and really scrub. Even like this, you won't get every bit of it off, but I just try to get a lot of it off so it can kind of help the things out just a little bit. And then of course the monos and all the inverts can kind of go through and just kind of help it out a little bit. Or at least in this case, I'm helping the inverts out. Get as fast as you can get. And establish right back, of course. If you get the majority of it off, it makes it a lot easier on everybody. Yeah, some of it's further sometimes. There's so many nooks and crannies that's really hard to get every little spot, but it's not bad at the end of the day. Just gotta really go at it and be kind of aggressive. That's another reason why you kind of want to get your Scape pretty well attached and laid down, however you want to do it, because especially with maintenance like this, we're going to be, especially when you do or anything else where you know you're going to be scrubbing stuff, or potentially have to scrub stuff all the time. You want to make sure it's all secure, so when you're scrubbing it, it's not just really loose and pushing all over the place. Like this one I do a very good job of, so you can really see me not from that far away, but it's really loose. Okay, a little bit too here and there, just kind of hold it down, but again, once it's kind of that issue no more, I really don't have to touch these rocks. Naturally, I kind of let these rocks get a little age with them anyway, but I'm going to go back and knock them pretty good. Actually, looks better, in my opinion. I think a lot of people look good. And then the goal is just not to have these big old furlets of strands of hair algae at all. But over time, just a little bit of haze on the rocks doesn't hurt nothing. If anything, it kind of makes things look a little better in my opinion. Just kind of shows the life more. But same deal. Once with the client tank as well, he kind of, fortunate enough, this client really loves like this style of work, and that's why I really wanted to show these tanks today. It's just, I do a lot of client tanks for people, but this client in particular really loves the nature style and appreciates Itachi Romano, so having these certain types of looks is really cool, and he loves them as well, so yeah, too, they're not as picky. Some people, they want rocks, everything just to be pristine, and sometimes that's just not the case. Especially when you do such a nature style aquarium, everything's not going to be perfect at the end of the day. So if you get past that, you'll be just fine. But too, some of these bottom rocks as well, just kind of give it a good scrub, because they kind of disappear with the carpet, and that's another reason why we kind of like keep it trimmed, so nothing, all the detail doesn't disappear on us. Almost done here. Yes, I didn't get every little thing, but checking the majority of it off. Making a lot better. Yeah, I get. So that's nothing to choose. Like while we kind of do the water change, you know, definitely don't do this after the fact because it's gonna be really hazy, and you want to be able to suck up all that water you just destroyed there. So yeah, I usually want to do a big scrub like that, and then we'll do it 50%. I'll probably go through and just wipe the glass down real quick so we can do that. This video's gonna be really long. I kind of figured that. So if you guys are still watching, I appreciate it. But I figured I'd kind of film kind of all the stuff I do, but also don't make it super long either. So yeah, the two you see here, you can kind of go through and do something like this. Honestly, always keep it horizontal, don't ever go vertical. Just don't want to scratch these glasses at all. Especially being in a tank like this. Most of these panels aren't really that bad. This is nice, a lot of good established plant tank in general. Most of the time, once it's all up and going, you really don't have, you know, glass doesn't really get that dirty. It's all looks pretty good and everything. I feel like that's another thing people say, like, oh, it's, you know, plant tanks are pretty much know aquariums once they're established, which is true to a point, but again, if you're going, you know, going for a pretty perfect plant tank, you know, not doing water changes also leads to problems as well. So we just naturally do 50% on all our plant tanks every visit. Again, of course, in different scenarios, we're not going to do as much like that, but pretty much our standard is doing 50%. We have so much biological in these tanks that like we can drain this whole tank 5 times and refill it up, and it's not going to affect nothing. So our biggest thing is just to keep these tanks, especially being somebody's home and right now this tank's right in the walkway. We're going to definitely keep this thing as pristine as we possibly can. Yeah, usually main sessions aren't too long in these tanks. You know, like this one in particular, there's actually a third 88 tank too that's smaller that we're actually resetting up, so that's why I didn't show that today. There's nothing to really show yet on that tank. Like a client like this where we have a lot going on, this is definitely, you know, it could be a 3-4 hour day just on these tanks alone, but that's if I'm doing the whole 9 yards, if I'm doing touch clean, you know, doing pipes, I'm trimming a little bit, of course. A little longer, but I'd say most time here for like a couple hours. It's not too bad at all. Client-wise, I can usually do 5 or 6 people a day pretty easily, depending on where everybody's at. I try to mark everybody that kind of lives in similar areas on the same days as best as I can. So you're not traveling all over the world in one day. See if they still have a siphon here. You know, it's like what's a recreator siphon. How long with their pipe over the water. So piping out of the water. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I got all the panels cleaned, so that's pretty much it. I may take the dual pad and do a little more finer cleaning with like the edges and stuff and whatever top I missed, but just like that, I mean the scraper pretty much gets 95% of it, so pretty easy. So I'll go ahead and drain this, you know, 50%, and we'll pretty much be done with it. So I've got the other hose ran up here, like I was saying, and so we got that up here, so it's kind of nice, just a hose attachment, and a sprayer, but kind of nice for plant tanks, gonna kind of disperse this so it doesn't blow everything around. So I kind of put it on a rain shower setting like this. Obviously, these units it's kind of nice because it's on the carpet. You can really just throw the water in there. It's not a problem, but that shower attachment makes it really nice to not disturb everything. So So while it's filling up, obviously this is all on row, so while we have the super jet back on, we could wait for the Nero to get filled up, but because we have two different flows in here going on right now, it's kind of a good time to remineralize. So again, with the salty shrimp, pH and cage. This tank uses about, when I do a water change like this, like usually about like 5 spoons of salty, which is, usually it's 5 gallons per spoon here, so maybe up to 7 is what we're usually doing. It just depends. I just kind of, I'll get my CDS meter out and kind of check if I need to. Just kind of sprinkle on everything here. Yeah, there's so much flow in here, especially not like this, but then once the Nero comes back on, the stuff will dissipate pretty quickly. Yeah, this tank I don't really dose any fertilizers at the moment. I don't think I really need to for a while, at least with such a fresh beginning, but this would be the stage to fertilize though, if you were. And then the only thing I really put in here, other than that, I'll do a little bit of Seachem Excel. I like to do that like if I do, just a good algae side, so a lot of like black beard and like this hair algae like popping up. I just like to go through garbage, just kind of keep things from popping up. Yeah, this whole pretty fun pump on here, but it also doesn't last this tank, which is nice. But here goes on like this, obviously you can get a much larger pump and pump this thing within minutes, but it's really not too bad. I think this fills up within like 10 minutes, I think 50%, so not too bad at all. It's a good steady flow, but not too much there. Especially like on a normal day. I'll be distracted and I'll be going back between the two different tanks that I'll be doing at the same time. And so one's filling out, one's draining, you know. So especially with this, I can, the good thing is with this house being so open, I can kind of hear the super jet running, so once I know it's quiet, I mean, it's probably getting close. But it's nice that it's not too fast, because I can just let it kind of fill up slowly as I'm doing other things. And then there's really going to be some more to talk about. Trimmings on here. So usually I'll have to bring out a net, which I'll have to look like I'll have to get mine later. We just kind of net out some of the loose ones, Carla, and columns up in between all these strips and I like this edge of it. You give me a trimming, but it's pretty worth it though. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this thing. Like I said, it's pretty simple. I'll let it fill up and show you guys kind of aftermath, but I think we'll go ahead and start showing you guys, you know, the 180p and how that gets kind of done. It's honestly pretty similar, I think, if not even easier. Probably the only difference I'll do today is kind of siphoning out the substrate off the sand to make it a little cleaner, but other than that, it'd be pretty similar, but I'll make sure I show both today. So. Yeah, we'll let that fill up and I'll show you the end result of it a little later. Alright, so now we're doing the 180p here. So I got the same pump that actually we used to drain the other one upstairs. That's what we'll actually plug in and physically drain with this one. So same deal, like so the ball valve, it'll actually go in the sink, so I can still kind of control it if I need to. Which with this tank, not necessarily have to do all the time. I usually can just let it just drain as fast as I want and it'd be done. But the first thing I will do before that is I will clean up the substrate, so just suck up some of that soil that's been leached to the front by some of the shrimp and all the inverts. And we'll kind of go from there, so kind of do that real quick. Not too long, so. You can try to use a pretty small hose for this, just so I just try to get that thin layer off, so sometimes you won't get all of it, but again, typically I would actually put new pots on top of this if I need to, but because we're just still trying to leach a little bit, and so this pot is full of sticks, we just kind of shut off the first layer and clean it back up and call it a day. Still looks really good, but with that soil that comes back. Yeah, hopefully when all these plants kind of root before the ground, we have a little less issue, but it's kind of such because if you were escaping, we try to account for this as much as we can, but even as much as we do, sometimes still have not. These fish like to stick around the soil for sure. Yeah, I don't think you see on the camera frame, but I just have a 5-gallon bucket right here. Usually just does the job just fine. Yeah, I got this little bigger hose. Just because some of it's stuff that's like bigger rocks, it's kind of annoying to constantly use this section. I do a lot of detail before now. So, just like that, I almost got it all done, but I'm going to go dump this bucket. Alright, got that emptied. See where it goes from here. Yeah, and of course, once I redo once I actually put down a new spot there, eventually, and I'll kind of add the details back into the substrate too. Which is still here, like I use 88 gravel and then crushed up gravel as well. Like it's still all here, but I think it's a lot better though. And yeah, at this point I have to plug in this thing, so I'm going to do that. Alright, we got the pump turned on, so it's going to start draining now. Now that we're close enough. Not that it really matters, but I just like to do this first in case I take out more water. That should get enough. When you watch drain, it's usually a good time to kind of just pick up the tank and get the thing removed. Like some of these crypts that scrambling or growing in place that should be. Everything looks pretty good this week though. Yeah, this tank I actually probably don't do a true 50. I basically, so I kind of keep the super jet running. If I don't, I'm cleaning the pipe and filter, then I'll actually take it down more. But because I don't have to do anything this week, I always keep the super jet running and I'll kind of take it down as far as I can until the lid pipe basically doesn't allow it. So probably this tank on things like this gets about 30%. Which again, with this tank being so much plants and dense that 30% more than fine. We're going to trim backs, which I did last week, but just kind of keeping a lot of the inverse stroke kind of pulled back too, because it will shadow this tank. So not so much this one, this will stay kind of compact and where it needs to be, but the height of the fill gets pretty bushy. And I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with this piece. I may try to do another type of driftwood or manzanita that's kind of like thinner that may like add on to this and kind of make it look kind of cool with the thinner branches. Like almost like little branches off a tree trunk or something. I'm not sure yet. I have to break pieces over and kind of play with it, but that was one of the ideas I was kind of playing with. So kind of distracted here with filming, but usually right before I really start draining, I go through and start grinding the glass here, clean it. Again, this tank doesn't really get too bad. I still do it, just get any bigger light grays that's on the glass, get it all sparkly. clean behind that. Yeah, once you hear that super jet start, which I think I already let too much water in it, but that's fine. I'm just going to turn that super jet off before it sucks in too much air. Yeah, that's so pretty much that. So yeah, whatever you want to call that, probably 30%, 25%, but that's all this tank really needs on a normal week. Like I said, I'm doing some other bigger cleans. We'll drain it down a little more, but. Panels this week aren't too bad at all. Honestly, probably didn't even need to do this, but just a few spots I see on the sides, some green spots. And then yeah, this same pump will go right back into the brew and just pump it, so nothing new here. Pretty simple stuff. Alright, and then I just reversed this, and now you can see now it's pumping in, so we have the bulb out there, so if we need to slow it down or not. Usually I let it blast full speed, doesn't really affect anything unless it's like shooting straight down, so a lot of times I'll angle that pipe to like hit against the glass so that it deflects, and pretty smooth operation other than that. Yeah, this is a prime example of a tank that you can't really just shove water through because it will kind of disturb the sand bed and all that and some of the finer plants, but there's a million different ways to do this. You could have a colander too and just let it disperse like a shower head naturally too if you have a little bucket or a little container like that. But like this way too, it's like I can change. That's why I do the ball valves, because then I can just kind of, if I need to go and run doing something, I could just kind of slightly close it and let it fill up really really slow. So ball valves is just really kind of an easier way to do it, especially when you already have the kind of equipment to do it with. It just makes it real easy, so you don't have to carry anything extra. You can adjust it as needed. Yeah, so then while this is filling up, and then I'll see if I get the super jet back on running. Hopefully, I didn't purge too much air inside of it. But while that's running and not running, I'll usually go ahead and mineralize the tank with salty shrimp and get all that going. Dose whatever I need to, fertilizer, Excel, wise, get that dosed in there. Why it's water. Again, it doesn't really matter when you do it, but I like when I'm dumping all this flow in here, especially when it's filling it up. Just mixes it kind of really nicely. See this super jet, purge it in that. That's what's nice about the CO2 reactors, like you can kind of purge the air with this all out. I don't know if you guys can hear it in my mic, but probably get that air purging maybe. And then once that spit water, we have water flow. And usually a little musty from it too, because all that pressure and the super jet, then it'll be blasted or something either, but it doesn't look too bad though. So, same deal as last time. Salty mineral. So this tank, again, it's all based off TDS readings, but you gotta do about like 8 spoonfuls in this tank, so this takes quite a bit of course, so pretty expensive tank to do a water change on, to be honest. But not really though. Could be worse, could be a new thing. Get that all flowing. Also, remineralizing is really important. It's one thing that nobody ever teaches, even in stores. And after like fish clubs, that's how I think just really the aquascaping community kind of deals with is RODI a lot. But yeah, remineralizing is very, very important because obviously filtering out that water all the way down to zero. You can't just put that right back into a tank because there's absolutely no minerals whatsoever in it. So obviously we want to take out all the bad stuff, but we also don't want to put back nothing either. So we kind of take out all the bad stuff and then we put back the good parts inside the water. So cool there. So that's why I like this salty mineral. Yeah, I could probably save money and make my own mineralizer, especially for how many tanks I do. But again, it doesn't really, with a pre-made product that's pretty high quality, it just makes it easier just to buy that and dose it. Like I said, that's a 750 gram container, and realistically that lasts me probably a month between all the tanks. So that's really good, because usually if the average person buys that big of a container for even just like a 90p, for example, 40 gallons, it'll last you a year, no problem. So yeah, it's really not that expensive, to be honest. But if you have multiple tanks, then yeah, that's when it does kind of it could potentially get pricey, but I think for the price of that stuff, I think it's worth it just to buy the good stuff that's already pre-made. And it does say shrimp, which confuses people. Yeah, it's formulated for, kind of shrimp and stuff like that, but it's an all around general remineralizer. So just because I said it, the company shrimp mineral, but that doesn't mean it's only for shrimp. I think a lot of people get confused by that. So of course, with neocaridina and caridina, we go pretty low pH. That's why they make like the GH12 that has no KHO if you want a lower pH. But yeah, like I said, for general tanks, for all pine tanks, you just get the GH and KH plus, and then you get to go. And that's why too, it makes it so much easier. The spoon that they provide, 1 spoon per 5 gallons. I mean, you couldn't ask to get any easier when it comes to measuring out something. So makes it quick work. And our CK XL, like I said, this tank does have a little bit of black beard from the old Scape, so just been kind of dosing this to kind of get rid of some of it. It's really not bad at all, but we just keep dosing it, so we keep it to a minimal, and then also it kind of kills off more and more each time, and then the flying fox and the monos after it's dead will really pick it off. So there's just a little bit on that big log. When we rescaped this tank, I had all of these logs pretty much dried out for like a month, and somehow it still regrew the blackbeard back. I don't know how that happens, but just to show you how crazy blackbeard is. But I've been syringe dosing it too, so spot dosing it. So like I say, it's really it's very minimal now. So just had to deal with it for a little bit. It was more annoying that it, when it grows like on some of these flanger and DPS, which it's not no more. So when it's on the wood, it doesn't really bother you too much as long as it's not, a massive amount. It's pretty minimal now. With blackbeard, I really don't deal with a lot. The only times I do is say if the CO2 container goes out and the fluctuations will cause the blackbeard to kind of outbreak, but yeah, the only reason this tank has it just because previous spores were transferred over, so kind of sucks, but we're solving it though. So this tank's refilling, so pretty good. Alright, so how to switch it over to the other fruit container. I usually end up using all that water, then I just need just a little bit more every time. We'll turn on the Nero pump back on, get some more flow in here. Just got the controller down here, so just need to replug it in. Now we should have some pretty good flow going. This tank we tried it out. I mean, usually I'll fill these those tanks up pretty much to the brim almost, as long as the flow allows it to. But this tank we kind of be keeping at least like an inch down, just because some of the rainbows, just for jumping wise. Obviously they can still jump out if they want to, but bringing that water level down just a little bit does kind of help. So we'll probably stop it right around there. Alright, so I got it all filled up now and everything put away. So pretty much wiping it down, I'll use generic, the world's best glass cleaner, and then awesome clean ice. But then the one secret thing, which is not really a secret, but not everybody really knows about it either, is to polish it off with iso alcohol. I'm using 99. They probably recommend less, like 70, because I think it potentially can damage silicone, but I don't even spray enough to even have that be a factor. So Obviously, what the ISO does is kind of gives less streaks, pretty much no streaks at all. So obviously glass cleaner, sometimes they'll still leave streaks. And so the ISO, basically, when you wipe it out with the ISO, it'll leave no streaks at all. And you have to clean it too. So let's kind of give this thing a good wipe down. It really does make it look like you polish the glass too, which in some cases I have some polisher stuff too that I can polish, but this tank's really not that bad to be doing all that. But it's there if I need it. Yeah, like all the watermarks too, like sometimes not even glass cleaner can get it off. Like obviously it's RO, so it's not like it's like calcium deposit, but yeah, sometimes that glass cleaner can only do so much, and then this ISO will really just polish it up nice. Something like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like other than that, like the more I possibly do is mess with the plants, which I did last week, or if I clean the canister, which I'll do a separate video on that whenever I do that, which possibly will be next week. Honestly, I probably need to open up that filter and do a drainage on that, but yeah, that obviously that takes more time. That canister is one heck of a job to pick up that thing and clean it, but yeah, I can show you guys how I do that, and that video will pretty much apply to any canister filter, but it'll be pretty cool because I'll do it on the big one just to show for reference though. But here's to show one last look at the tank. Yeah, looking really, really good. Be exciting to see how this kind of establishes more over time. Just give you guys kind of more backdrop. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this tank. Next, I'm gonna show the 120p all cleared up now, and kind of show the final result on that one too. But that's pretty much 180p. If you guys want to keep following this tank and just see the progress, of course, I'll try to do as much as I can on YouTube, but then follow social medias, mainly Instagram. I do have a separate JJ Aquariums Facebook now too, so all those I post all the short clips and updates on a lot of these tanks. So make sure you definitely follow those and keep following along with this tank and see how it progresses. Alright, so here's the 120p all cleared up now, so give you guys a kind of better look at it. So really, really cool. So yeah, as you can imagine, here's the front door. Just walking into this, it's just such a cool setup to have as an entry tank. Probably doesn't really get any better than this. But yeah, just really, really awesome. I think it's really fitting because, like, say if you switch spots and say if like the 180p was up here, yeah, as awesome as that, like visually that tank's insane. But like, I think just inside a home, as soon as you walk in, just like this really clean, with the Agumi, it's just how clean they are, and with just the simplicity of them, I think that's what makes, I think, this tank even better for this spot, is when you walk in, just the simplicity, how clean it is. You pretty much got no equipment. Obviously you got the glass pipes, and probably the only thing that could make this tank better if we actually had suspended lights, but obviously that wasn't going to be really an option with how tall these ceilings are. And on top of that, probably the only other upgrade we'd ever do on this is a light screen, which would have already been a thing, but unfortunately ADA has stopped selling the 120p and 180p light screens. So, because trust me, both of these tanks would have light screens if that was the case. But yeah, hopefully that changes over time. But for now, we'll just have to keep them as is. But can't really complain though. Looks awesome without them, and it would look even more awesome with them. So, but yeah, with the Aqua Fog back screen on there, it makes a big difference as well. I think if this tank was clear in the back, it would look pretty cool as well. Especially the way it's designed. I think it'd be really cool looking too. But yeah, there's that just that blank background right there, even the white, straight white background is a really nice look and really clean. Obviously the 180p downstairs is just a clear panel, but it works out for that tank because you can barely even see in the back with how much Scape in there. But yeah, just like the 180p, just definitely follow on social medias and Instagram to kind of see, really up to dates on a lot of these tanks. I'll try to do my best and film on YouTube, but obviously those don't come as often because I usually try to do a little more for YouTube and lengthier stuff. But yeah, just hopefully you guys like that maintenance session for the day. I know it's a really, really long video, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that, but that's should be a lot of information and just really a cool video to kind of look back on and see some of how the maintenance is done and kind of how I do it. But like I said, I'll make videos on the filter cleanings next on the Superjet, and then I'll try to do trimming videos for both of these tanks as well eventually, so do some more content. And then of course other people's tanks as well. There's so many different types that we do, so it's gonna be kind of fun to showcase more and more as the time goes on. But yeah, I appreciate you guys watching, and let me know if there's anything specific you guys want to see in the future. But I'm just going to keep doing stuff like this and showing client tanks. We'll definitely film installs as well over time. I think I uploaded one last week of a water box plant tank, so we'll keep doing stuff like that, doing install videos, we'll do trimming videos, we'll do scaping videos, just trying to doing day-to-day stuff, and anything I can actually film while I'm working I definitely will. So but yeah, that'll wrap it up for the day. And definitely follow on all socials and follow along, and I'll see you guys on the next one.